The emergency sirens were screaming again, 3 short bursts, then a long one. That meant another trauma inbound. Odrin wiped his forehead with a sleeve already soaked through with sweat and blood. The thick, suffocating heat of the field hospital's triage tent pressed in on him like a second skin. He didn't even look up from the open leg he was stitching. "Dr. Odrin, incoming," a voice shouted from outside the flap. "Put them in Bay 2, said without missing a beat. "Tell Kara to prep the fluids and get a skin ready. I'll be there in 2 minutes." It was the 4th trauma case in under an hour. He hadn't sat down since the sun came up. He wasn't even sure how many hours ago that was. 20 maybe? More? The leg he was working on belonged to a miner from the outer ridge. Crushed femur. Had stabilized the bone and was now closing the gash before moving him to imaging. His hands moved on autopilot, every movement deliberate and practiced. "Doctor, the Varnak observers are requesting access again." "Then give them gloves," muttered. "They can watch from the corner." The observers were always watching lately. Tall, semi-translucent beings with elongated limbs and skin that shimmered like oil on water. One in particular had taken an obsessive interest in Liam's shifts. His name was Rilu. No one knew if that was a first name, a title, or a sound he liked, but he was always there, scribbling on a tablet with fingers that bent the wrong way. Rilu entered the triage tent silently, his 2 large eyes scanning the space. He stood near the entrance, beside an unused cart of gauze, and watched Liam finish the sutures with a deliberate calm. "You have not rested," Rilu said. Liam tied the final knot and peeled off his gloves. "Neither has the war." "That is not an answer." "It wasn't meant to be." The miner groaned as orderlies wheeled him out. Liam grabbed a new pair of gloves and headed for Bay 2. Rilu followed, stepping over cords and around puddles of antiseptic like a ghost. Inside Bay 2, a soldier lay unconscious, torso wrapped in a tourniquet-soaked bandage. Shrapnel wound. Deep. Liam barked orders for analgesics, then started cutting through the bandage. Blood soaked the sheets. "You have exceeded human rest limits by over 6-fold, Rilu said. "I'll sleep when this shift ends." Rilu tilted his head. "You said that yesterday." The shrapnel had torn into the soldier's spleen. Liam moved fast, calling for clamps, suction, more light. Rilu said nothing else, but he was writing furiously with one hand while the other hovered near his translator module. The procedure took an hour. Maybe more. When it was over, Liam leaned against the wall for a second, letting the weight of his body press him into the cool steel. His shoulders ached. His fingers trembled from fatigue. Rilu stepped closer. "Your cortisol levels are near collapse threshold. You should be unconscious. I drank 2 cups of that alien coffee sludge your people brought. I think my blood is half caffeine now. You are not designed for this." "Maybe not, but someone has to do it." The next case was already wheeled in before he could walk out. A woman, early 30s, half her face burned. Liam pulled his gloves back on. "Get her vitals and cool compresses. We need to clean the area before anything else." Rilu stood motionless at the foot of the bed. "There are over 200 medical staff on this base. Why are you the only one operating beyond the limit?" "Because I don't stop when I'm tired. I stop when the last patient is stable." That night, if it could still be called night, he collapsed on a cot in the corner of the supply room. He didn't remember getting there. When he woke, 8 minutes had passed. "Dr. Odrin," Rilu's voice said from the doorway. "Another emergency." Liam sat up slowly. His limbs protested. His eyes burned. His heart felt like it was trying to beat through sand. He stood anyway. "Let's go." 3 days later, Liam was still on shift. His face was hollow now, cheekbones sharp, voice hoarse. He barely spoke between patients. He had stopped counting how many. The war front kept feeding the hospital bodies, and Liam kept patching them up. A younger alien medic, Tercel, cornered Rilu in the hallway during a rare lull. "He will die if this continues," Tercel said. "His organs are failing. I read the scans. He does not respond to orders. He works until collapse. Then restrain him." Rilu blinked slowly. He bit the last medic who tried that. Tercel stared. "He bit them." Rilu tapped a control on his tablet. A grainy video played back showing Liam, eyes wild, lashing out when someone tried to pull him from a surgery table mid-operation. He said, and I quote, "Touch me again, and I'll show you what adrenaline does." Tercel was silent for a moment. "How is he still alive?" Rilu's voice was low. "I do not know." Liam finally collapsed during a debridement. He didn't fall dramatically. He just stopped moving, scalpel frozen mid-air, then sagged against the table. The room erupted into chaos. Two nurses hauled him off the floor and onto a gurney. Rilu moved faster than anyone expected, helping stabilize his head and ordering scans. The results were not good. Severe dehydration, the technician muttered. Muscle breakdown, liver stress, electrolyte collapse. He should have passed out 2 days ago. Rilu stared at the readings. He has no augmentations? None. I checked twice. They moved Liam to the recovery wing, hooked him up to fluids and nutrition. He regained consciousness 8 hours later. How long was I out? He asked, voice rasping. Rilu stepped into view. Long enough to prevent cardiac arrest. Your body is consuming itself. I need to get back. You will do no such thing. Liam struggled to sit up. There are patients, there are other doctors, Rilu interrupted. You will rest, or you may not survive the next shift. Liam stared at him, then sank back against the pillow. Yes, I pushed it too far this time. Rilu approached the bed and studied him. Why do you do this? Because if I don't, someone dies. You are one. You cannot save all. I don't have to. I just have to save the next one. Over the next week, Rilu observed Liam's recovery. It was slow. He had to relearn pacing. His hands still shook when he held a scalpel. But he slept now 8 full hours, with no interruptions. Rilu documented everything. He sent reports to the Central Medical Council of Varnox. Their responses were confused. Some called it a biological anomaly. Others said it was cultural madness. But none could explain why a species that needed so much rest could also choose to ignore that need entirely. Rilu once asked Liam again, during a quiet moment in the courtyard, "Why do you push past your limits?" Liam was seated, sunlight warming his face. He didn't look as pale anymore. Because I've seen what happens when I don't. Rilu was quiet for a moment. Your species is terrifying. Liam chuckled softly. We're not trying to be. Then stop working like you're made of steel. You first. Rilu stared at him, then made a note on his tablet. By the end of the month, Liam was back to full shifts, but with enforced breaks. Rilu personally scheduled them into the hospital system. If Liam skipped one, the operating room would lock him out. It was the only way to slow him down. Still, Rilu continued to study him, to understand him, not just as a physician, but as something else entirely. Something the Varnox still didn't have a word for. The Medwing's ventilation system gave out at midday. No warning, no alarms. One moment the airflow was humming along with the usual dusty rasp. The next it choked into silence like someone had stuffed a towel up its throat. The temperature inside the trauma ward climbed fast. Humidity clung to every surface, thick and oppressive, making every breath taste like copper and sweat. Liam Odrin was elbow-deep in a thoracic cavity when it happened. Did someone switch the heat on for fun? He asked, squinting against the glare of overhead lights. Because if this is a prank, I'm about to give someone a free gallbladder removal. The nurse assisting him, a flinty-eyed Neuralian named Vesh, didn't even blink. Her 4 fingers moved quickly, handing him a retractor. Air system failure, she said. We've rerouted secondary units to surgical storage, but triage and diagnostics are unaffected. I'm standing in a soup of internal organs and humidity. That qualifies as affected. The patient is stable. Focus. Liam peered down at the exposed lung. Yeah. Just keep the clamps ready, there's a bleeder under the pleural fold. Outside, the corridors buzzed with erratic movement. Portable fans whirred uselessly against the swelter. Medics shuffled through with soaked uniforms and makeshift ice packs shoved into their collars. Several Varnock orderlies had clustered near the observation deck, their bioluminescent skins flickering with visible discomfort. Rilu stood among them, arms folded, watching Liam through the glass. You're leaking, said a voice behind him. He turned. Tercel approached, holding a manual override panel, his gloved hands twitching with understated anxiety. He's not leaking, Rilu said. He's sweating. It's a cooling response. Biological inefficiency. You lose fluid every minute that way. And yet he operates more effectively under strain than most of our machines. Inside the surgery, Liam's voice rose again. Clamp, Vesh. No, the other one there. Hold it. All right. Let's close him up before I start hallucinating my own childhood. An hour passed. Then 2. The temperature refused to drop. One of the Varnock assistants fainted during an forerun. Liam finished another procedure, wiped his hands on a towel that had long since given up trying to be dry, and exited the ER just in time to be handed a new chart. "You're kidding," he said. "This one's got a bowel rupture and a spinal fracture." "Transport vehicle collapse," Vesh said, already prepping a new tray. They were crushed under a load of reinforced steel beams. "Why do I feel like all my patients are competing for worst-case scenario?" "You attract them. Can't tell if that's a compliment or a curse." Rilu entered without asking. "Liam," he said, "you are now operating in an environment exceeding your species' optimal temperature tolerance. You must withdraw." Liam waved a hand toward the oar. "Unless you've got a spare surgeon hiding behind your shimmer cloak, I'm heading back in. Your skin is changing hue. Your hydration levels are, I've had 3 liters of water today. You have also perspired over 5. Liam turned toward him, eyes bloodshot but steady. "Look, the guy on that gurney has a split bowel and spinal instability. If I don't get in there fast, he's going to drown in his own bacteria. You can run diagnostics on my fluid levels after I sew his guts back together." Rilla hesitated. "You cannot maintain this output. I've done worse. You will crash." Liam picked up the chart again. "Then catch me when I do." The operation was long. The spinal fracture required stabilization, and the bowel tear had already leaked into the abdominal cavity, making every second critical. Liam adjusted posture every 10 minutes to stay conscious, shifting weight between his feet to keep blood flowing to his brain. His gloves stuck to his fingers like second skin. He didn't notice the tremor in his left hand until Vesh reached across and held it steady for a moment. No words, just a nod. When he finally emerged from the oar, he didn't speak. He walked straight to the wall sink, cupped water into his face, and leaned there with his forehead against the cool steel. "You need to lie down," Rilla said quietly. "I need a fan. You're overheating." "Yeah, so's everyone else. No one else has performed 3 invasive procedures in 34 degrees Celsius without rest. That's because I'm the idiot with the scalpel license." Rilla stood there, unmoving. "Why do you keep pushing past reason?" he asked. Liam turned slowly, water dripping from his chin. "Because some of us don't get the luxury of reason. We get people. Bleeding, broken, dying people. And they don't wait until the room cools down. You cannot save everyone. I know that. But I don't get to choose which ones I lose." 2 hours later, the environmental systems came back online. Cool air whispered through the vents like a long-forgotten promise. Several of the Varnock sighed audibly with relief, their skin patterns shifting back to stable tones. Liam was asleep in a chair in the hallway, one boot still on, the other missing. A tray with half a protein bar rested on his lap. Rilu approached and scanned him silently, eyes narrowing at the vitals. Tercel joined him, carrying a data pad. "He should be in the recovery wing. He refuses. You could sedate him." "I considered it. And he would wake up furious and start stitching people with his bare hands." Tercel looked through the glass at the surgical wing. "No one else functions like this," he said. "Not even the Neuralians. They collapse. They respect their limits." Rilla watched Liam's chest rise and fall. "He adapts to the need, not the limit. Eventually, the need will outpace him." Rilla didn't answer. The next morning brought a different kind of emergency. A supply shuttle exploded on descent, scattering debris across the east quadrant of the base. 3 crew members were pulled from the wreckage, all with compression injuries and internal bleeding. Liam was already on the landing pad when they arrived, sleeves rolled, gloves snapped on. He barked instructions to the retrieval teams, dividing the patients by urgency before the medics even stepped in. "Get the one with the collapsed lung inside first. The others can wait. We don't have time to argue. Move." Rilla caught up with him just as the first stretcher crossed the triage threshold. "You were asleep 90 minutes ago. I was dreaming about paperwork. Save me from that. You are not scheduled for rotation today. This isn't a rotation. It's a fire. And I came with a hose." The collapsed lung needed emergency decompression. Liam performed a needle thoracostomy on the landing pad, while shouting for oxygen tanks and stabilizers. His hands didn't shake this time. Inside, the second patient had a torn diaphragm and signs of internal hemorrhage. Liam was in the or within 4 minutes, already scrubbed in. Vesh met him with the instruments. No one questioned it anymore. By the time the third patient was in stable condition, Liam had gone 20 hours without more than scattered minutes of rest. His scrub top clung to him like wet paper. He sat on the floor next to the sterilization unit, knees up, head back. Rilu sat beside him, legs folded awkwardly. You will damage yourself. Liam didn't open his eyes. Probably. Why do you ignore your own safety? Because I'm not the one on the table. One day, you will be. Liam cracked one eye open and looked at him. Then you better have learned something by then. Rilu said nothing. Later that evening, the Central Varnock Council sent a new directive: halt all participation in human trauma care until further study. Rilu responded with a single-file video footage of Liam performing field surgery under heat stress, sleep deprivation, and active disaster conditions, with no augmentation and no assistance beyond basic tools. He marked the file: subject, Odrin, L, classification, unclassifiable recommendation, observe further. Attempt to comprehend later. The floor of or 3 was slick with saline and iodine when Liam stepped in barefoot. His boots had been confiscated, technically by Kara, after he developed a pressure blister the size of a coin from standing too long in soaked socks. He hadn't argued. He'd just walked in with compression wraps on both feet and a pair of surgical slippers that squeaked when he turned too fast. Patients prepped, said Vesh, adjusting the drape with a flick of her wrist. Dorsal impalement. Entry just below the scapula. Exit through the anterior ribs. Liam leaned over the table. A metal shard, about as thick as a table leg and jagged at one end, protruded from the patient's back like a grotesque antenna. The front exit wound had torn through soft tissue and narrowly missed the heart. The patient was unconscious, sedated, but his breathing was shallow and irregular. Vitals fluctuating. BP's low. We've started transfusion. No pneumothorax yet. Liam rolled his neck. Yet, they began the procedure without ceremony. Vesh retracted muscle tissue while Liam used a handheld cauterizer to stem minor bleeds. The shard had passed between ribs, slicing through intercostal muscle and grazing a lung. The trick was removing it without triggering a collapse or jagged recoil. Rilu stood behind the observation pane, arms folded, joined by 2 other Varnock specialists dispatched from the Central Council. One was covered in a lattice of shifting color bands, the other wore a translator module that blinked intermittently, as if struggling to keep up with what it was hearing. That human is barefoot, said the striped one. He refused footwear, Rilu replied. Why? He said it was less slippery. The translator flickered. That is not a rational risk assessment. No, Rilu said. But it is effective. Inside, Liam maneuvered around the shard, tilting it slightly to assess resistance. The patient's oxygen levels dipped. He paused, adjusted the retractor's angle, and began to inch the metal free. Slow, he muttered. Too fast and he'll bleed like a stuck valve. You need a clamp here, said Vesh, pointing to a vessel just beginning to swell. Liam nodded, then turned to the surgical tech. Give me the curved clamp, the one with the single locking tooth. The alien assistant hesitated. You mean the half-moon latch? No, that one locks too tight. The other one. The one with the notch. The tech handed him a completely different tool. Liam didn't even look. Nope. Try again. Rilu turned to the council representatives. He has memorized every tool in that tray by touch. He recognizes them faster than our interface relays. That is not possible. He once performed a tendon repair while quoting an old comedy sequence. He corrected a punchline mid-suture. Back on the table, the shard was halfway out. Liam braced one hand against the patient's shoulder, using his fingers to stabilize the surrounding tissue. The metal made a wet sucking sound as it came loose. Blood surged, but not uncontrollably. Pressure dressing. Clamp that artery. We got lucky. Vesh handed him a closure gun, and he began sealing the internal tears with quick, economical movements. Not rushed, just efficient. The kind of efficiency that came from having done something too many times to count. Vitals stabilizing, said the nurse beside him. We're holding. Liam exhaled loudly through his nose. Remind me to write a very angry letter to whoever decided to store unanchored metal rods upright in a moving cargo unit. Do you write letters? No, but I'll start out of spite. Outside the OR, the council medics were still watching. He has not consumed calories in over 6 hours, the striped one said. He had half a protein bar at midday, Rilu replied. That is insufficient. He says chewing makes him sleepy. The translator blinked twice. A few hours later, the surgical wing went quiet for the first time in 2 days. The emergency backlog had thinned. No new transports had arrived. The warfront was, for the moment, silent. Liam sat on a supply crate in the back hallway with a cold compress around his neck and a disposable cup of broth in his hand. It tasted like cardboard and regret. He drank it anyway. Rilu approached, followed by the council observers. You are no longer under workload demand, Rilla said. You should rest. I might. You say that often. I mean it this time. My legs are arguing with my spine. Council representatives have questions. Liam raised an eyebrow, but didn't move. Go ahead. The striped Varnock stepped forward. You have demonstrated output far exceeding biological parameters for your kind. Thanks. You disregard safety alerts. You ignore hydration limits. You deprioritize caloric intake. You choose surgical continuity over rest cycles. Yeah, that about sums it up. Why? Liam leaned back against the wall. Because the math is simple. Let's say I take a break. 15 minutes. That's maybe one patient I don't see in time. Maybe they crash. Maybe someone else catches it. Or maybe they don't. I don't gamble with those odds. The translator Varnock tilted its head. Your species accepts physical suffering as a strategic choice? No one accepts it. We just sometimes pick it over the alternative. Rilu added quietly. He once closed a femoral artery using 3 clamps and a strip of sterilized plastic from a glove box. The vascular team was still en route. That is not medicine, the striped one said. That is improvisation bordering on recklessness. That patient walked again, Rilu said. Liam stood, joints popping. Look, I get it. You're trying to understand how this works. But it's not about endurance or willpower. It's about refusing to let the worst-case scenario happen just because I needed a nap. There was a pause. Then the translator said, your species is not logical. Not always. You endure damage to preserve others. Pretty much. The council medics exchanged a glance. Their skin tones darkened slightly as sign of unease. You are not sustainable. Neither is war, Liam said. We all do what we can. That evening, he was finally ordered off shift. Not suggested. Ordered. Kara threatened to lock the doors and change the access codes. Liam, too tired to protest, passed out on a cot in the medical storage room surrounded by stacks of surgical gloves and boxes of alcohol swabs. When he woke, it was morning. Real morning. Quiet. Cool. No alarms. No blood on the floor. He walked barefoot into the corridor and found Rilla waiting with a tray. Coffee. The humankind. Imported. You are to consume it before touching any surgical tools. Liam took the cup. You're learning. I have compiled a treatment protocol for humans who refuse to rest. That sounds ominous. It includes forced hydration, locked doors, and passive-aggressive reminders. Liam sipped the coffee. You're practically human now. I find that offensive. They walked slowly toward the observation deck. Below them, the trauma wing was still but ready. Liam looked out across the stretch of beds and equipment. You think they'll ever understand why we do this? Rilla shrugged. I do not. But I think they now understand that you will do it anyway. Close enough. Behind them, the council medics were already drafting a new report. It would be sent to the Varnock Central Health Bureau, annotated with biometric data, procedural logs, and something new, a footnote. It read, human endurance cannot be replicated. It can only be witnessed.